Hey there guys, welcome back to my playthrough of Devil May Cry 2, but this time I'm on Dante Must Die difficulty. And, correction, I've already beaten Dante Must Die difficulty for Dante's campaign. I haven't done Lucia's campaign yet, so as you can see right here, my health has increased, I have more Devil Gauge, and I have all the guns. So we have the pistols, the submachine gun, the shotgun, the rocket launcher, and that's it. And I also have all three of the swords. I also have some of these buffs as well, so I have the one where I'm able to fly in Devil Trigger mode. I also have the Electro Heart ability, which allows me to add lightning to my Devil Trigger attack. And I currently have equipped the ability to recover more health in Devil Trigger mode, which is definitely what the game recommends, because this game's fundamental designs, it's something I'm going to have to elaborate on, because in all honesty, guys, I had more fun playing Devil May Cry 2 on Dante Must Die difficulty than I did with Devil May Cry 1 on Dante Must Die difficulty. And it wasn't because of the fact that I was playing on New Game Plus, because the strategies I was already doing on Devil May Cry 1 on Dante Must Die difficulty on New Game are literally the same strategies you would be using on New Game Plus. And at least when I'm starting on New Game Plus, I don't have to waste time farming. And I gotta say, at least getting the red orbs in this particular game is a lot more bearable than in Devil May Cry 1, because you at least have a mission select option in this game. And let me just show you real quick what I mean. So when you have a save file and you, say for instance, beat normal difficulty, or you beat hard or Dante Must Die, if you select a save file, you have your mission select. So you can choose to do any of the missions that you currently have unlocked on the difficulties you selected. So for instance, if you beat the game on normal difficulty and you start hard difficulty on that same save file by loading into your save file that you created once you beat normal difficulty, you will have access to Mission 1 of hard difficulty. And only that, because again, you haven't unlocked the later missions, and the same applies with Dante Must Die. When you beat your hard difficulty save file and you have it saved, you can go to that save file and you have Dante Must Die unlocked for only the first mission, since you're starting from that particular point. So because I've already beaten the game on Dante Must Die, I have access to all of the missions. So Dante has 18 missions, and Lucia has, I believe, 13 missions. Dante's campaign is the more entertaining campaign that has more variety, whereas Lucia's campaign is kind of meh. Lucia is also more limited in her moveset, and her ranged options are pretty poor, since only her throwing daggers are reliable, and when underwater, only the bowgun is reliable. And Lucia's campaign is also incredibly short. You can breeze through Lucia's campaign in no time compared to Dante's campaign. So it's nice that this game actually has the ability to select missions, because if you're wanting to get more red orbs, for instance, you can go to, say, for instance, the final mission or this mission, which are just boss-specific missions. So when you beat the boss, you get your orbs that you normally get at the end of a mission. And also, when you get red orbs in the middle of a mission, if you restart the mission, it will save the orbs that you have collected, just like in Devil May Cry 1. Well, in Devil May Cry 1, you had to save after collecting the red orbs and then reload that save to start from the beginning, but you would at least retain the orbs that you collected. So that's pretty good with Devil May Cry 2. And I also learned a couple of new things with some of the mechanics in Devil May Cry 2. And a base fundamental mechanic that Devil May Cry 2 has that for some reason Devil May Cry 1 doesn't have is you have the ability to swap between targets while you're aiming. So if you're in the aiming animation by holding R1, if you press the left thumbstick, you can swap between targets. Devil May Cry 1 doesn't have this system, so you're at the mercy of Devil May Cry 1's incredibly poor auto-aim system, and it makes absolutely no sense why you don't have the ability to swap between targets while aiming in Devil May Cry 1, when like 4 Resident Evil games before Devil May Cry 1 gave you the ability to swap between targets. That was for Resident Evil 1 OG, Resident Evil 2 OG, Resident Evil 3 OG, and Code Veronica. And you're telling me they somehow neglected such a base fundamental design that fixed camera-based games by not giving you the ability to swap between targets? And it took them 2 years after Devil May Cry 1 released in 2001 to finally implement the ability to swap between targets in Devil May Cry 2 in 2003. How does that make sense? That's so dumb. But I have all these weapons and I haven't showed them yet, so I'll show them. So you have the submachine guns, very reliable against certain bosses. I mean, they don't do a lot of damage, but they're definitely more reliable than the pistols. So you have the shotgun. Shotgun's incredibly good against certain enemies, like there's a flying cherubi stone figure of some sort that you encounter later on, and the shotgun can knock it over if you're close enough to it. The shotgun's also very good against certain goat enemies, and also I'd like to use the shotgun against those wolves that you encounter for the first time in Mission 5. And you also have the ability to use your pistol alongside your shotgun, and also with your rocket launcher. I think with the rocket launcher, you can only use the pistol when you're in the air. But with the shotgun, if you move the left analog stick towards an alternate target that you're not locked onto, you can fire the pistol towards them, which is helpful. But other things. So I predicted perfectly in that first playthrough when I was just getting introduced to Devil May Cry 2 that the wall running was going to be a big problem because you do not get iframes while you're wall running. Even when you start the animation, like even the startup frames of the wall run animation, you do not get iframes. So the amount of times I would try to dodge to the side or backwards and I'd end up doing the wall run animation, it was very frustrating in Devil May Cry 2. So I expect to see more of that in this playthrough. I mean, I've already done it though, because I've already beaten Dante Must Die difficulty, and yet I haven't done Lucia's campaign yet. But this game is incredibly short. The campaigns are very short. Obviously, together they make up a full game, probably the same length as like Devil May Cry 1. But Lucia's campaign, as I've already mentioned, is very short. Oh, also, I forgot to showcase the rocket launcher. So the rocket launcher, compared to the grenade launcher, is incredibly slow, and you do not have the ability to cancel the animation of firing the rocket launcher. You can only dodge once the animation's finished, which is a bit awkward and pretty tedious, but you just gotta make sure you pick your shots correctly. And again, you can't use the rocket launcher while you're in the air, you can only use the pistol. It's still a nice touch though. There's the game stuttering again. So I've already upgraded my power statistics. Not all of them. I think I've fully upgraded the Rebellion sword. And also, I didn't showcase the other swords, but the other swords aren't really any different. Yeah, so I have these other swords, the Merciless and the Vendetta. I don't really understand the benefits of these particular swords. They seem to be exactly the same as the Rebellion. I would assume the Vendetta does more base damage at level 1 compared to the Rebellion at level 1, but it doesn't feel like it. And then with the Merciless, it says it's a thin, long sword with a long range, but the range doesn't feel any longer, so I don't know what they're talking about. And I also beat the game without using items, because at least you have the ability to heal in Devil May Cry 2 when you're Devil Trigger, and you also have this amulet and the buffs here to improve your ability to heal right over here, and then you have this other one for increasing your attack power, but it's pretty pointless, because the base ranged option you have when in Devil Trigger mode is good against certain bosses, but not other ones. In those cases, it's better to use the rocket launcher, though unfortunately, you can't augment your guns using Devil Trigger. You're only limited to that machine gun function when you Devil Trigger, which really sucks. Let's just rush through this. You know, I gotta say, guys, the soundtrack in Devil May Cry 2, I find I enjoy more songs from Devil May Cry 2 than in Devil May Cry 1. Like, some of the songs are really high octane, they get your heart pumping. That's one of the main reasons why Mission 5 is one of my favorite missions in Devil May Cry 2, because of the fact that you're hearing this epic music while you're running from a chopper. If only Devil May Cry 1 had more songs like that. It's so hard to believe this is the only gold orb you can find in the game. I'm not too sure if there are submissions. I assume there are. Yeah, but as you saw right there, the enemy damaged the other enemy. And the rocket launcher is pretty good against these enemies. And this is a level 3 rocket launcher, which is max level. And I love that you can do these combo attacks with your sword depending on when you move the left analog stick when pressing triangle. You know, in Devil May Cry 1, you had to rely upon that animation cancel method with your sword to actually deal the most damage with your sword and also, like, attack enemies in rapid succession. But you don't have to do that now because they've actually integrated the combo system properly. So you can do, like the typical 3-8 combo if you're already pushing the left analog stick forward, or in any direction really. So if you're just pushing the left analog stick in any direction, and you do that at a certain point in your triangle combo, you can change whatever hit you want. So right now I'm moving the left analog stick. If I were to start mashing triangle, he does a 3-hit combo instead. But if I were to hold the left analog stick forward on the 3rd hit of the combo, I get a 5-hit combo as I'm mashing triangle. And then on the 4th hit, this happens. I get that instead. So it's nice that they've actually implemented those, I guess you could call them command normals since they're tied to the left analog stick to actually change whatever combo you want. But yeah, level 3 Rebellion. Don't really understand the point of these other ones. Max submachine gun damage, max missile launcher damage, and I haven't purchased any items, but I have upgraded my health and also the Devil Trigger gauge. I'll upgrade this. I got a trophy. Max out Devil Trigger gauge with any character. So that's the max amount you can get. But this definitely gives me the chance to talk a lot about the fundamental framework of Devil May Cry 2's gameplay. I know a common criticism this game receives is that the enemies are very passive, but you fight a lot of them though. They have to be passive if you're fighting this many of them. Because if they're too aggressive, then you spend more time getting stun locked by the enemies or getting screwed by other poor foundations in the gameplay. The passivity is there to ensure that when you're being ganged up by large amounts of enemies, they're not trying to cheat or do anything problematic. Like, it's totally understandable why this is the case. And furthermore, like, Devil May Cry 1 also had some pretty passive enemies as well. This isn't really something new with Devil May Cry 2, but I'm definitely glad that you can actually see the enemy health. I'm glad they die fast, and at least when they go into Devil Trigger mode, they don't have an absurd amount of health, like with those stupid mannequins from Devil May Cry 1. That first encounter with the mannequins in Mission 1, when they Devil Trigger, you spend like 10 minutes just shooting one with your pistols, and you had no good options. It was so dumb. Like, with the way the Devil Trigger system was designed in Devil May Cry 1, you might as well just put down your controller and just admit defeat. It's like you're better off just being killed if you fail to stop the enemies from Devil Triggering, because the gameplay really becomes miserable. At least when you're in later missions and you have the grenade launcher, and enemies like the fetishes, for example, Devil Trigger, you can dispatch them rather quickly and they're still moving pretty slow. But most of the time, the Devil Trigger system was obnoxious, and I'm so glad you're not dealing with a lot of, like, stupid enemies. Like, you know those death sights, for instance, or, like, the death scissors, and you had to deal with the very clunky slam attack system and the clunky auto aim in order to actually hit them with your slam attacks so that you can hit them in the head. And it was always, like, very clunky because you oftentimes hit their weapon on accident, you oftentimes missed, you oftentimes got flung all over the place by that stupid Death Sight's vortexes. Like, most of the time you were using air raid and spamming Devil Trigger on them, except with the Death Scissors, because for some reason when the Death Scissors go into that state where they're doing the corkscrew attack, they get invulnerability. Like, there are just certain enemies in Devil May Cry 1 that are just awkward with the way they're designed, like with those Death Scissors and Death Sights, and also with those stupid frosts as well. Even if you have the Ifrit, when you try to do Inferno on them, you can get the hit out on them, but at times they get iframes for no reason. They don't get hit twice by the Inferno. Like, they'll sometimes just jump backwards and ignore the hits generated by the Inferno, so they're completely invulnerable, and then they'll just jump towards you with that claw strike and damage you. Like, there's just a huge amount of jank in Devil May Cry 1, and I don't really feel like Devil May Cry 2 has the same amount of jank, which is good. And I feel like Devil May Cry 2 better understands what it's trying to be compared to Devil May Cry 1. Like, people criticize this for being easy. I just say it's more so a consequence of the designs being a bit better than Devil May Cry 1. I mean, are there definitely negative qualities to Devil May Cry 2? Oh, for sure, but I'll explain them when I get the chance. But this part right here, you have to break all the masks, otherwise you won't be able to access the door. And for some reason, you can get this moment where if you don't break these two masks that I just broke, you can't seem to access the blue flame room. Like, you can go into the room, but it doesn't trigger the scripting that enables you to activate the blue flames. It's very odd. Maybe it's something else, I don't know. I should be using the submachine gun here. These enemies are no problem. I'm so glad that Dante Must Die doesn't change them to be nuisances. But a couple things to note about the dodge mechanic. The invulnerability frames are different for each particular dodge animation. So, like, the iframes provided by the side dodge are very different to the iframes provided by this move, and in certain cases, the game expects you to use certain dodges. Like, there's a boss in Mission 16 that's probably the worst boss in the game by far, but he has this move where like, it's three heads, and one of the heads emits electricity, but when he comes towards you and he does that one electricity move, you have to specifically do the backwards dodge, which is this, and you have to do it 3 times. You have to do the full animation, otherwise you will not be able to avoid that move. At times the camera can mess with you, and it can affect your ability to do the correct dodge, but it's a lot easier to showcase these issues than actually describe them. And I'm well aware that Devil May Cry 2 had trouble development. I actually saw on the Wikipedia the issues surrounding the game, and a part of that is definitely shown in the gameplay and the quality of certain bosses and enemies, but I don't know, this game just doesn't feel as broken as Devil May Cry 1. And like I said, I had more fun going through Dante Must Die difficulty compared to Devil May Cry 1. By the way, you cannot do the 5-hit combo when you're locked on, because you end up doing the thrust move or like the uppercut, for instance. But having gone through both Devil May Cry 1 and Devil May Cry 2, I'm genuinely curious to see what Devil May Cry 3 will be like. So I think I might skip Lucia's campaign and just go straight to Devil May Cry 3 once I finish uploading the rest of my Devil May Cry 2 playthrough. And I do wonder if after uploading my Devil May Cry 2 playthrough, there will be people who will say that it's impossible to like Devil May Cry 3 if I find Devil May Cry 2 to not be as bad as people say it is. And to those people, I just shake my head in confusion because there's no basis for this kind of puzzling thought process they're talking about. That's not how liking or hating a product works. It isn't such a linear process as a lot of these people tend to favor. It's like when people say, oh, you hate Resident Evil 1 Remake? Well, your entire criticism towards Resident Evil 4 Remake is invalidated, despite the fact that Resident Evil 1 Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake are separate titles with different design mentalities, stories, characters, writing, etc. I shouldn't have to explain why there's no sense to this simple mentality. But getting back on track, it's rational for there to be a situation where, for instance, I like Devil May Cry 2, but also Devil May Cry 3. Of course, when we're talking about Assassin's Creed, though, that's a different story, especially when it comes to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because there's no way you can like the first 4 Assassin's Creed games, but also like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The differences between these two groups are stark when it comes to their writing, stories, and gameplay designs. This is what I mean when I say that the people who favor a very simplified mentality when judging the way other people like or dislike products have no real basis with what they're saying. This is precisely why it does no good to favor this kind of simplified mentality, and there's going to be more I'll likely say in the future parts of this playthrough, but we'll see. Alright, mission 3 should be no problem. This is our first boss of the game coming up. Yeah, also, if you keep holding R1 the entire time, even if there are enemies in your way, you will still remain locked on to the target that you've locked on to, which is nice. And then when you couple that with the ability to swap targets while you're aiming, the aiming is definitely improved in Devil May Cry 2. Oops, that was bad. He's never done this behavior before. Whatever. Cool that you can neutralize his sonic pulses. And he also double triggered, so I gotta move. But again, double trigger is nowhere near as stupidly designed as how it was in Devil May Cry 1. Though to be fair though, you only ever encountered double triggered enemies whenever you were taking too long to finish them off, or if you weren't knocking them over. And the bosses never double triggered in Devil May Cry 1, but in Devil May Cry 2, certain bosses have the ability to double trigger, and I don't think their damage resistance changes. I think all that happens is that they deal more damage to you. At least that's what it felt like when I was playing through Devil May Cry 2 on Dante Must Die difficulty. So you see, I'm still remaining locked on because I'm holding R1. And even if I get knocked down, as long as I'm holding R1, I will stay locked on to him. And he's dead. Very simple. At least you're not dealing with camera problems like you would be getting in Devil May Cry 1. This game definitely has better fixed camera angles, even if at times the camera can be a nuisance. And this boss here is very simple. You can get it done very efficiently. But of course, I cannot actually move on until I get rid of the enemies, because again, the auto aim on your melee is still an issue in this game, just like in Devil May Cry 1, because I'm trying to like bust through barricades or break down certain objects. And he just will not prioritize what I want him to prioritize. He keeps prioritizing the enemies. See that? That was me using the pistol. Look at that! I love how he doesn't even take his eye off the enemy he's locked onto. He just blindly shoots the other enemy. That's pretty cool. It's interesting that the pistol shot is actually knocking the enemy over. Simply because I have my shotgun out. Normally doesn't do that. He devil triggered, so he's going to be resistant to stuns. You see how quickly he died just then? I don't think the devil trigger system actually gives them damage resistance. I think they have the same amount of life, they just can't be flinched. And also, that kick you just saw me do in the air, you can only do that if you're holding R1. So if you're holding R1 and you press triangle while you're in the air, you will do that kick. But if you're not holding R1, you will just do the regular ground slam. Yeah, you just fight way too many enemies in this part. There are definitely times where they make you fight way too many enemies, and it really drags the combat out. Whereas in Devil May Cry 1, I think there was only like 1 or 2 sections where you fought way too many enemies, and it dragged the combat out. Like, this is just way too excessive. You know, even a combat system that people don't like, you can make sure their attention is not drawn to it by just not introducing so many enemies. And even though I do prefer the combat on this game compared to Devil May Cry 1, it's still no excuse for the fact that at times you just fight way too many enemies in certain parts. And I literally had to fight them because of the fact that the auto-aim on my sword would never allow me to actually hit the debris. By the way, these parts right here are really dumb. That time I was able to hit it, but normally you can't hit it with your regular attack. You can only hit these things with your uppercut or your ground slam. And the amount of times I'm trying to hit those things, and he keeps prioritizing an enemy, it's really annoying in a later mission coming up. But this is a boss fight right now, and it's very, very simple. Just watch out for the tentacles. Nicely, you can swap targets. Okay, the tentacle's gonna come back around because of the direction he came from. This one's a single one. That was a mistake on my part. Or actually, you don't even have to. Yeah, you can actually stay in this corner and avoid the single tentacle attack. See, if I stand here, he's not gonna hit me. I keep dodging forward on accident because I'm only tapping circle. At least the hitbox isn't active on this tentacle when it slows down. There's no reason for the hitbox to be active if the tentacle is going to slow down at the end. Uh-oh. Again, my fault. Making such basic errors right now. Oh, good. Now he's open. You have a certain amount of time before the tentacle comes back. Oops. Really should get into the habit of jumping more. That's at least a good use for Devil Trigger to avoid getting flinch. It's needed for one boss, which is the worst boss of the game, like I've already described. It's the one with the 3 faces. And it's done. And really, I didn't even need to jump. I could have just used the hyper armor from the Devil Trigger to keep firing. But when you get on a motorcycle, that's where you normally get the shotgun. But of course, I already have it, so it doesn't matter. And it's just really odd how they don't really show what happened upon Dante getting to the city. They just show him driving into a tunnel at the end of this particular mission. And then at the very start of the next mission, he's just in a tunnel. And he's in a city somehow. It's such a jarring transition. This part right here, I prefer to use the shotgun against these wolves. And they will Devil Trigger. Gotta get really close though. There you go. They Devil Triggered. But these wolves are mainly designed to be a nuisance when they accompany the boss that they're affiliated with. So I can totally understand their design here. It makes sense. I'll use the submachine gun for a bit, and then I'll use the shotgun. Okay. Watch the wolves' movements, by the way. You see the way I'm circling? This is what you normally want to do when you got this wolf near a wall or something, and you're near the wall as well. It's really nice that you can just hold down the square button to just continue the fire. You don't have to mash it like crazy like in Devil May Cry 1 and strain your thumb in the process. So I should mention, I've watched the cutscenes of Devil May Cry 5, and I was pretty invested with what was happening in Devil May Cry 5. And I was very interested in the character of Virgil. Nero was also interesting as well. Dante was fun too. It was also nice to hear V cite William Blake, because he quotes William Blake a lot, and I've never heard of William Blake. But some of the poems that William Blake has written, very easy to misinterpret if you're taking things too literally, which is pretty much the point of William Blake's poems. And I couldn't help but feel like there was a reason why they chose William Blake specifically to be quoted by V, given that V kind of turns into the main antagonist. Given that Urizen and V are the same person, they're like two halves, like the good half and the bad half. Like Urizen is the bad half, V is like the good half, even though V does have some amount of evil, I would say. Like he's more so callous than actually evil, maybe. And it was very interesting to see that split. And you know, Virgil is actually Dante's twin brother, and Virgil is the same guy that you actually fought in Devil May Cry 1. He was Nilo Angelo. And the manifestations, or familiars, I think they're called, are based on certain enemies that you fight in Devil May Cry 1. So like V has a miniature griffin, he has a shadow, and he also has Nightmare apparently, even though that golem looks nothing like Nightmare. Nightmare was literally just goop. That's all Nightmare was, but for some reason he's a golem now. Very odd. But I was thoroughly invested with what was happening with the cutscenes in Devil May Cry 5. And the game looks beautiful. The use of the RE engine with Devil May Cry 5 was a good choice. The game looks really nice. And I also liked some of the serious and more comedic moments with Devil May Cry 5. I feel like they achieved a pretty good balance with the way the cutscenes were presented. But obviously, when I play Devil May Cry 5 eventually, it's not going to matter so much because I have to have a good gameplay experience to tether me to the narrative. But these tanks right here, they like to fire at you 3 times, and they stay firing in the same direction for all 3 shots. Like this second tank that's shooting, and he's shooting through this other tank I'm dealing with, which is pretty dumb. But the quickest way to get rid of these tanks is to aim for the eyeball and do the ground slam. See, I'm doing a lot more damage because I'm doing the ground slam while devil triggered. But these tanks are the best way to build up to an S rank on your combo and get those trophies where you have to get an S rank while you're comboing. But these tanks also have a machine gun, and it makes no sense how the machine gun works. It's like it shoots through the tank randomly. Very odd, very broken. And I got shot by the other tank. You see, it's still firing in the same direction. The tanks are forced to fire 3 times in the same direction, even when you're not there. I got shot by the machine gun just then. It's still shooting me somehow. And I can't get around this corner. Now for the other tank. What's the lore reason behind these infested tanks? I've never understood that. Like, what's with the eyeball? What's with the possession of these tanks? I've never understood that with Devil May Cry 2. And I've never watched the cutscenes. I watched like the first couple of cutscenes of Devil May Cry 2, but I could not get invested in it because of the fact that the voice acting wasn't that good. Secondly, the story just didn't seem very interesting, and one of my subscribers did say that the story of Devil May Cry 1 and Devil May Cry 2, they aren't really important to note, although in the context of Devil May Cry 5, Devil May Cry 5 cites Devil May Cry 1 a lot. You even fight certain enemies that were in Devil May Cry 1 in Devil May Cry 5. And they even mention Nilo Angelo as well, and you fight a bunch of Nilo Angelo knockoffs as well for some reason, because of the fact that Virgil was originally Nilo Angelo. But it still seems rather odd that he would just make those wannabe versions of Nilo Angelo. But I mentioned before that Mission 5 was my favorite mission of Devil May Cry 2. This is why. Running from this chopper is very entertaining, and you also get the chance to do some creative parkour as well. You can either wall bounce, you can double jump. It's fun, and this music is epic. This is my favorite piece of music in the entire game. God, I love this music. It's so good. It gets your heart pumping, and I love it. And running from a chopper as well. What a cool idea. And the max speed of the dodge I'm doing right now matches the rhythm of the song. How convenient. But you can't destroy this chopper, you can only destroy it once you get up to an upcoming rooftop. This music kicks ass right now, I love it. And it's just so weird doing this kind of platforming with buildings in a linear experience. I was genuinely impressed by the sequence, doing this kind of creative platforming with buildings in a linear experience, because this is the kind of stuff you normally see in open world games. But these enemies are going to despawn, and it's just us and the chopper. The chopper takes more damage if you aim for the eyeball, but it's pretty hard to hit when it's not, like, right above you. My missiles keep missing. The game says you're firing heat-seeking missiles, but it really doesn't feel like the missiles you're firing are heat-seeking. I love this camera angle as well with the way Dante is looking at the chopper. Love the way this feels when it's paired with the music. Enjoyment of music also stems from other factors as well. Like with this camera angle, with everything else happening. I love it. He's firing missiles. Well, could not tell what direction they were coming from. At least the camera isn't changing in a weird way. You can also go on top of these structures, but I don't really see the benefit of doing so. Okay, let me fly. Careful not to hit the rotors. Oh god. Oh shoot. Did not have enough double gauge. The shotgun's probably a better choice here when he's close by. Oh. Now those are definitely heat-seeking missiles that the chopper is firing compared to the missiles I'm firing right now. You see that? Why did I just get double gauge out of nowhere? I don't understand how that system works. Like, randomly your double gauge just refills. I think this might actually be a good opportunity to use this buff instead, where my attack power is increased while in double trigger mode. That's definitely doing a lot more. Oh shoot, I ran out at the wrong moment. It canceled my dodge, unfortunately. I just did more damage just then because I hit the eyeball. And I did the wrong dodge, apparently. Gotta swap to the other weapons. Look at the way these missiles turn! That is pretty funny. Oh! Whoa! 4 times! Goodness me! These missiles are relentless. Oh, God! This mission's so much fun. I love it. Come on! I did not even hear that. Oh. Dante definitely gets the best missions compared to Lucia. Oh my god, again. Man, you're persistent. Oh god, jumped right into that one. I thought I was able to get away. Yeah, that was very sloppy, but it was still quite fun. I quite like these cinematic set pieces. Go forward. Do not stop firing. Aside from when he adjusts like that. So there's going to be a bunch of bats spawned by this guy, and they're gonna get in your way and also attack you. Like right now, they're really aggressive. But one of the great things about using the rocket launcher is that you can accidentally hit the bats, and it'll charge up your devil gauge. So you can use that time to not only heal, but also deal damage to the boss. And they won't be able to stun you while you're in devil trigger mode. That could have been bad. There we go, now we're on to the next phase. So the side of his mouth is the weak spot. And try to swap to the submachine guns instead. I wonder how good the rocket launcher is here. Nope, not very good. I will say though, when you go into devil trigger mode, I don't feel like your melee attacks get that big of an increase in their damage. Whoa, okay. This move is obnoxious to avoid, especially in devil trigger mode. The dodge just isn't enough to avoid some of these moves that he does. And I say that and I avoided that somehow. There's a specific pattern in the way you're supposed to jump, and the direction you're supposed to jump as well. This move isn't so bad. I'm not hitting the side of his mouth, I got it hit right over here. This guy's patterns can be more dangerous than whatever Nilo Angelo does with his sword move in this final boss fight with him. At least the camera is not an issue with this guy compared to Nilo Angelo. This game definitely gets a lot of things right compared to Devil May Cry 1. Yeah, so try to use Devil Trigger as a backup in case he gives you a bad pattern. That was very close. If I didn't dodge, it would have been hit. Oh. Ah, god dang it. Oh, shit. Oh my god. That's a very damaging move. Oh. 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 Terrible dodges. And he's done. Yeah, that can be a tricky fight, but it's fun, and I enjoy it.